Hello, everybody. It's time for another edition of the Reviewing Network's NFL Prediction Show. Title to be determined. Again, we're still waiting to figure out what the title of the show is going to be, but Week 4 has come and gone, and before we get to my predictions for Week 5 in general, let's go ahead and do what we usually do here at the start of our show and taking a look at this week's Reviewing Network NFL Power Rankings. And compared to last week, you can see there has been a lot of different changes overall in the rankings in general. Three teams that were in the top 5 last week, they're not there anymore, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, Buffalo, the Jets, and the Steelers, pretty down on the list, mostly because of how piss poor they played this week in general. And we'll delve more into those as I go into my predictions for the week in general. But let's take a look at this week's list. And you can see that there is some new faces into the top 5 this week in general. Some familiar faces. But starting off at number 5 here, I have the Baltimore Ravens. After a couple of weeks where they looked like a team that was literally on the cusp of going 0-3, this week they just decimated Buffalo, and they realized, oh shit, we paid a ton of money to bring in Derrick Henry, let's use him. And of course, he just ran all over the Buffalo Bills in that game. The Bills looked horrible on Sunday night. It was one of those games where it's just like, I shut it off almost halfway through the game because it's just like, okay, maybe Baltimore could possibly do what it usually does, but no, it didn't. Baltimore did not collapse like they had the last couple of weeks. Maybe they're learning their lesson. Maybe this is the point in time when they realize, we have a team that almost made it to the Super Bowl last year. Why don't we go ahead and, finish these games off so we don't have to worry about collapsing in the worst possible time. And, we've got this guy that used to be on Tennessee's team that we spent a ton of money bringing here, that the Cowboys are kicking themselves in the butts to realize that they had no intention of picking him up in free agency. So let's go ahead and use him. And boy, did they use him on Sunday night. 200 yards rushing and receiving total. Just a dominant night for Derrick Henry. And it makes everybody who plays the Baltimore Ravens coming up, they should be very, very afraid. Especially like when he ran that 82-yard touchdown in the beginning of the game. I just thought to myself, oh man, the Steelers are fucked when they have to play him. I mean, they were able to stop him when he was with Tennessee, but yeah, I really think that they're going to rely heavily on Derrick Henry when the Steelers have to play the Ravens coming up in November. But we'll get to that game eventually. But returning to the top 5 this week are the Kansas City Chiefs, and I have this next to my number 3 pick, the Minnesota Vikings, as they are now these are now the only two undefeated teams left in the NFL at 4-0. So you're probably wondering, why are they not in the top 2? Like, I had somebody on my Twitter account basically asking me that question. Minnesota and Kansas City are undefeated, and yet I don't put them in the top 2. Why is that, basically? And mostly because neither one of these wins that Minnesota and Kansas is okay. Minnesota, yes. Kansas City, the defending world champions. The first 4 wins of the season have not been that good. I mean, they have not been that perfect team that they were at the beginning of last season. But like I said before, Kansas City is known for getting off to a very slow start early on in the season. They usually don't become the Kansas City Chiefs that we know them for to be until about halfway through the season. So in October, I expect to see the Kansas City Chiefs that we're used to seeing get back into play here. We started seeing it a little bit this week against the Chargers. I knew going up against the Chargers, Travis Kelce to the Chargers was like Gronkowski to the Steelers. Like every time the Patriots played the Steelers, there was a ton of Rob Gronkowski, and nobody can really stop him in general. And Travis Kelce had his best overall day against the Chargers this season, but still wasn't great overall. But didn't get as many touchdowns as he probably should have. I mean, there was only about 2 touchdowns scored, and one of them was a long throw for Patrick Mahomes to Xavier Worthy, and of course, they had a touchdown in the fourth quarter that sealed the deal in general. Chargers kind of gave them the game at that point in general. Yeah, they could have here's the thing. It's 4th and goal. I got what Jim Harbaugh was trying to do because, you score a field goal, you get the lead, but then you have to realize that, Patrick Mahomes can take the ball down the field so easily, and, it's gonna essentially sum up to being like a game where, it's gonna be 17-13 instead of 17-10 in general. So I got what he was trying to do, but the Chargers, I didn't think they had no chance to win that game. Not just because their injuries were piling up, but because Kansas City has basically made them their bitch for the last couple of years. And even with Jim Harbaugh there, I expected what happened to happen there. So, yeah, Kansas City overall has not had the best overall win so far in the month of September. But like I've said time and time again, that's kind of to what is to be expected with the Kansas City Chiefs early on in the season. We don't see prime Kansas City until maybe the start of early November, and then definitely into December, January, and February. So we'll see what happens going forward. The Minnesota Vikings at number 3, I've just finally caved in and just realized, okay, maybe this team is definitely for real. Maybe this team is not the 2017 was a fluke Vikings in general, but I mean, when you get off to a 28-0 start against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field, it's kind of hard not to see that this team really is something special. They would have probably been the number 1 team in my rankings, but yeah, they almost gave that game away against Green Bay. I mean, the Green Bay Packers in the second half just, they scored more points. They were literally on the cusp of making it a comeback in general, but thankfully, Green Bay doesn't have a good kicker right now. Like, their kicking situation is horrible right now. But it's kind of hard for me to not get on the bandwagon. But the only reason Minnesota isn't higher up on the list is because of the second half of that game. Minnesota gave up way too many points. They let that game get way too close. They pretty much did what Baltimore does in close games in games like this, where they start off just pounding the competition, and then the competition slowly but surely comes around in the second half. Kind of like what the Steelers do whenever they play against a team that scores too many points on them, which we'll get to that a little bit later on here, and that's probably one of the reasons why they're so low on the list here. But number two is a team that's been here for most of the power rankings so far. The Detroit Lions, who had just a dominant performance last week over the Seattle Seahawks, knocking them off as one of the few undefeated teams left. But Jared Goff had a pretty perfect game, quite literally, 18 of 18. The running game was great. The defense was playing their strongest football yet. The wide receivers got wide open. Jameson Williams at 70-yard touchdown. I mean, Seattle made it close, but there was just no stopping Detroit. They just played one of the most perfect games you could possibly do in general, and they got the big win over Seattle, and they're in the bye week. They're having a bye week right now, so good for them. They get to go to the bye week at 3-1. They're still my team that could be a Super Bowl contender in February if they keep this pace up, but they'll have competition because we have a new number 1 this week. And who would have guessed? The Washington Commanders, man. Speaking of teams that are playing near perfect football, Washington may be one of those sneaky good teams this year if they keep this pace up because of what Jaden Daniels is doing for them. I mean, the win against Cincinnati was amazing. The way he just dominated over Arizona this week was also incredible. Like, it was really something interesting to watch in general because this team really is coming together under Daniels. They really do believe in this quarterback. They're doing everything they can to protect him. The team is getting so much better. I mean, you put 42 points over Arizona, a team that at times has looked pretty good, but they just can't stick the landing in the second half when it's all said and done. And this was another one of those games where, Arizona had a lot of high hopes going into the season, but, just haven't been able to do it so far. But maybe they'll turn the tide this week against San Francisco, who's still banged up. But we'll delve more into that a little bit later on here. But Washington right now, playing lights-out football. They really are the best team right now in the NFL. And all I can say for Washington is simply this. Don't fuck it up. Don't fuck it up, because we saw what happened with what you did with RG3. We saw what happened with Dwayne Haskins. We even saw what happened with the guys that you brought in, like Case Keenum and Alex Smith. Carson Wentz. Dwayne Haskins. I think I said it already, but you get the idea here. Washington has not been the best overall with quarterbacks, but then again, that was during the Dan Snyder regime. That was during a time when Dan Snyder cared more about making money than actually putting together championship teams. And this new regime, they've got a superstar quarterback in the making here. I mean, if he keeps playing this way and Chicago doesn't gain some traction anytime soon, we may be having that conversation about whether or not, this is another Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud situation here, because C.J. Stroud, of course, went to the Texans, and he was the number 2 pick. Jaden Daniels was the number 2 pick for Washington. So we could be having that conversation pretty soon if this keeps up. But Caleb Williams has been definitely getting a lot better. At least he did this week against the Los Angeles Rams. So those are my power rankings for the week. As I said, they keep changing in general. So let's go ahead and get into Week 5, my NFL predictions for week number 5. And there is definitely good news from the results from last week's predictions. I did pretty damn well. I got another 12 out of 16, a 75%, which means I bumped myself up to a C. I'll take it. I mean, I needed a C when I needed to pass grades in high school in general, so I'll take it here. I mean, I know it's not much. I'm stretching for it, but right now, if we count up where I'm at right now, let's see, 48, 16, that is 64. So let's see, 64 games so far. 37 out of 64, which is not the best, but certainly a whole lot better than it could have been. I mean, especially considering what happened with week 2 and 3, but I'll take it. Plus, I kind of cheated with week 4 because one of the games I had was a tie, and I said I don't care who ends up winning this one because I thought that was going to be such a bad game. I just decided to give myself a tie. So yeah, I kind of cheated there, but screw it. I'm back up to it where it was at week 1. So let's go ahead and move on to week 5 in general. Now the bye weeks this week, we have our first bye weeks this week. Bye Felicia, if you will. Philadelphia is off this week. Detroit is off this week. So is Tennessee. So is Los Angeles Chargers. And So let's go ahead and take a look at who I have for this week's NFL predictions. And I'll start off with the Thursday Night Football game, of course, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. The NFC South had a critical matchup between these two franchises that could easily be the division leaders at the end of the year, because of course Tampa Bay has won it the last 4 years, and they have been overall one of the stronger teams coming into this season. You can tell that Baker Mayfield is growing overall as a quarterback in the Tampa Bay program. Like in the last 2 years, like he's really turned that program around. Atlanta, still a very mixed bag in general. I thought they were going to lose to New Orleans last week, but we really don't know how good New Orleans really is, or just the first 2 weeks of the season were kind of a fluke in general. But this is the type of game where I want to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they're just the better team overall. But this is one of those games. It's a Thursday night game, so it's probably going to be another low-scoring game, and one of these two teams will probably be more dominant than the other team will be, because that's just how these games go. But on paper, this should be one of the better Thursday Night Football games, a competitive Thursday Night Football game. It's not going to be like last week with Dallas or New York, or the week before that with the Patriots or the Jets or the Bills and the Dolphins. No, we should have a good football game here, a divisional matchup between two teams that are in contention right now for the division in general here. And like I said, I want to go with Tampa Bay, but this just feels like a game where I feel like Atlanta will come in there and show what they can really do in general. And I'm going with the idea that Atlanta probably gets out of here with a win. A low-scoring game, probably, but I think Tampa Bay and Atlanta should probably make for an intriguing matchup in general because of how good these two teams have been, how good the Buccaneers have been, and how the Falcons have played so far this year, where they have been in games, but they just haven't. In the two games where they were really in it, they really couldn't finish the job in general. I mean, they were in it against Pittsburgh. They were in it against the Chiefs. They actually took the lead early on against the Chiefs, but the Chiefs came back, and Atlanta couldn't really do anything about it. But it's what's going to be kind of against Atlanta going in this is that Bijan Robinson might not play, but honestly, they've been using more of Tyler Algier their backup running back, more than Bijan Robinson, so I don't think it really will hurt them that much. But yeah, taking Bijan Robinson out of there is a critical player in general here, but I'm willing to go with the idea that the Falcons probably go win this and beat Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be very, very close in general, but I'm going to take the Falcons in this one. So give me the Falcons to get above 500. Buccaneers will drop to 3-2. Falcons at 3-2. So that brings us to our very first international game of the season. Oi, Governor, we're heading to London to watch the Jets take down the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not going to do that accent all the way through this game, and it is in England. I'm sorry. I'm thinking it's another game in general, but I don't think we're getting to the games in Germany and Munich until November, I think. But New York Jets and the Minnesota Vikings. The New York Jets sloppy game against the Denver Broncos last week. A game they probably should have won. A game where they had most of the advantage going forward, but they just couldn't put it together in the rain, and it was just a sloppy game in general here in that game, and the Broncos ended up winning that one. It was not even that good of a win for the Denver Broncos either. They were just lucky that they were able to get something out of there because their quarterback, Bo Nix, actually threw a touchdown. But Minnesota, as I said before, I'm riding the bandwagon here, and as much as I don't want to buy into the idea that the Minnesota Vikings are really going to be this good again, I feel like this is just another example of something like 2016 where they started off very good and then they fall apart. I'm just not. I wasn't ready to go into it, but I'm going to go into this game with the idea that the better team is going to win this game. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers has had some pretty good games against the Minnesota Vikings when he was with Green Bay. This ain't with Green Bay, though. You're playing with the New York Jets, and they can be a very mixed bag team in general, as they have been this season. They haven't been able to stretch back-to-back wins so far this season, and he thinks that's probably not going to change. Actually, no. I'm sorry about that. I got that wrong because they beat the Titans and then they beat the Patriots in weeks 2 and 3. But overall, I just feel like the Minnesota Vikings are going to go into this game with their hot hands going in the mix. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison playing very good football right now. Sam Darnold's playing very good football. He'd love to get revenge on his former team. It's just pointing in the direction of Minnesota probably staying undefeated going into this week. So I'm going to go ahead and take Minnesota to win this one. So give me Minnesota to go 5-0 and the Jets to drop to 2-3. Moving on to the 1 o'clock games on Sunday, we have the Carolina Panthers against the Chicago Bears. Carolina, look, Andy Dalton, I've had a lot of criticisms about the way they treated Bryce Young, but I'm sorry. I have to be with these people that say that Andy Dalton right now is moving the team along much better than Bryce Young ever did. And I don't know if it's just a problem with the coaching staff having or David Tepper's hand in it, but it's been working so far. Even though they lost against Cincinnati last week, I mean, they've almost had a chance to come back and win that game, but Cincinnati got the better of them, and Cincinnati really needed a win here. But they're going up to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears, and Chicago's moving in the right direction. Last week was definitely a step in the right direction for Caleb Williams, who has been struggling as a rookie overall, but then again, he's a rookie. This is only his 5th start as an NFL quarterback, and last week he did pretty well in general, and slowly but surely he's building towards something in general. He had the benefit of playing a Rams team that is very banged up right now. The Panthers are a team that I don't know if they're really thinking that Andy Dalton is their true answer going forward, but I think the Chicago Bears go into this one, and they probably do win this one overall. I think that we'll see the continued growth of Caleb Williams as a quarterback. I think we definitely saw it last week against the Rams, and I think these are nice stepping stones for a kid like him to show everybody what he can really become for this Bears organization. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Bears in this one. Give me the Bears to go 3-2, and the Carolina Panthers to drop to 1-4. So moving on to the next game, we have a critical AFC North matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati, as I said, got their first win last week against Carolina, which they pretty much needed to have because I don't think they really would have gone. Their season probably would have been over if they had started 0-4, but they face a team that is slowly but surely starting to build its identity with the addition of Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens. They've won the last 2 straight, and this is a situation where, a game like this can really change the dynamic for one of these two teams. I remember 5 years ago when the Steelers and the Ravens were 2-2. It's the Steelers and the Ravens, the Steelers had won their first game of the season. They were 1-3 and they were hosting the Ravens, who were 2-2, and then the Ravens win that game, and then they reel off 13 straight after that game and went on to have like a 14-2 record that season. Made it all the way to the AFC divisional round, and then they lost to Tennessee. Steelers, they just kind of fell apart after that. Finished with a measly 8-8, despite their best efforts to try to keep in there. This could definitely be one of those situations where the Ravens, this is just the beginning of a stretch run for them, and they're going into Cincinnati where they've had their number for so many years. So I feel like Cincinnati has to win this game to get some momentum going forward, because this is the game where this is a critical game in the division in general, but they're going up against a Baltimore Ravens team that's finding their identity. They realize that we need to put the focus on Derrick Henry more, so there's going to be more of an emphasis on putting him more into the game in general, and I think he'll play more into the game plan this week. I don't think the Bengals' defense is strong enough to really keep him in check in general, and that's what's definitely got me worried about this one in general. So, yeah, and even though the Bengals, they got the win over Carolina, really is not that big of a deal because Carolina's not that big of a football team. I just feel like the Ravens are going to have their number in this one, so I'm going to take the Ravens in this one to go to 3-2. Give me the Bengals to drop to 1-4. Another big matchup coming up here between two division leaders right now: the Houston Texans hosting the Buffalo Bills. The Stefon Diggs revenge game, if you will. Of course, the Bills had their number called last week against the Ravens, who completely obliterated them. And to make matters worse, Von Miller is suspended for the next 4 games, and that's a critical piece of the Bills' defense in general. And Stefon Diggs, I want to believe, is going to want to have a great game against the Texans, unlike what he did against the Minnesota Vikings, when he didn't really do that much. Texans right now, they got a close win last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. C.J. Stroud had to help them come back and win that game against Jacksonville, but I still believe in the Texans. I still have them to be my surprise AFC pick for the Super Bowl, and I'm going to stick by that in general. I think the Texans will go into this game. It'll be a close matchup indeed. I think it'll definitely be a very offensive-heavy game. So, I think the whole team's going to take this one. So I see Stefon Diggs' new team beating his old team. Give me the Texans to go to 4-1 and the Bills to drop to 3-2. Which brings us to the next game we have here, and that is the Indianapolis Colts in Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. The Jaguars are the only team left in the NFL who has yet to experience a win so far this season, but there is definitely good news for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You're playing the Indianapolis Colts, a team that you have been easily able to beat in Jacksonville since 2014. We're coming up on 10 full years since the last time Indianapolis won a game in Jacksonville. I don't know what it is about this team, but even in games when they have to win to get to the playoffs, everyone remembers what happened in 2021. All they had to do was win to get into the playoffs, and then Jacksonville just completely dismantled them in that game. And Carson Wentz loses his job in general. He has to be the scapegoat there. Colts did pretty well last week, all things considered, because they beat my Steelers and fucking Joe Flacco, man. I'll get to the Steelers later on because, oh boy, do I have a lot to say about what Mike Tomlin had to say about Joe Flacco this week. But if Joe Flacco is playing in this game, they might have a shot at it. But I'm just going with the idea that this is a very tough place for the Colts to play in, and the Jaguars have had their number. I don't expect that to change, but history can definitely change on a heartbeat. But for the sake of this, I am going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars to get their first win, and give me the Jaguars to go 1-4. The losing teams, all the teams have won a game, and the Colts dropped to 2-3. I'm just going with history at this point. Moving on to the next game, we have the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. Dolphins are literally the worst team in the NFL right now. And I couldn't believe I was saying that before, especially with what was going on with Carolina. But, man, when Tua Tagovailoa isn't there, this team just completely falls to shreds. My God, nothing they do can work. They tried with Skylar Thompson, it failed miserably. They tried this week with Stu Huntley, they failed miserably. They couldn't even get a touchdown until it was too little too late in the fourth quarter, which, by the way, was the first time they had a touchdown in 2 games. That's not good for this football team. And you got these quarterbacks trying to get to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but you're throwing these balls way past the point where these guys could reach him. It's like Tyreek Hill is a fast runner, but he's not that fast to go catch it from that far of a distance. And it's just like I really don't think the Dolphins have any idea of what they're doing here. I feel like what Mike McDaniel's plan is like what Donald Trump says about what's his healthcare plan. I have concepts of a plan. This is what Miami's head coach is like right now. I have concepts of a plan. Yeah, a plan that may not even include Tua Tagovailoa, because we don't even know if he's going to want to come back and play with all these concussions. Plus, keep in mind, this is week 5. The earliest he could play is week 8. So there's still 3 more weeks of this. So if the Dolphins have to get to 1-7 before Tua comes back, possibly, that's not good for them. I mean, that's when heads are really going to start to roll here. But then again, you also have a team like the New England Patriots who are having a lot of trouble figuring out their identity. And it doesn't help when one of the centerpieces of their offensive line, David Andrews, suffers a season-ending injury. So that basically means that Drake May would probably be best not to start anytime soon, because if he's in front of that New England offensive line, he's going to get destroyed, and his confidence is going to get brutally smashed here. But so this is a very tough game in general. It could be a very sluggish game in general, but I'm going to go with the home team in this one. I still have this idea that the New England Patriots right now are going to find a way to win this game simply just by the fact that Miami is playing so horribly right now. Miami is not a good football team, and I don't even think a bad football team like the Dolphins could beat a team like New England. I know they've had their good luck against them since Tua took over for the Dolphins, but yeah, this is just good, looking like a New England win for sure. So, give me the New England Patriots to win this one. I'll take them to go 2-3. Dolphins dropping to 1-4. And so we come to the last of the 1:00 games on Sunday. The Cleveland Browns going to Washington to take on the Commanders, and yeah, this one should not be that hard to figure out in general. Who I think I'm going to go with here. I'm going to go with the hot hand here, and that is of course with the Washington Commanders because of what Jaden Danielson and the crew have been able to do in the last couple of weeks. I mean, they're playing really good football right now. They're playing effective football. Up until that Arizona Cardinals game, the punter hadn't punted for nearly 2 games. I mean, that's really something special where the Commanders can score as many points as they can, and not just touchdowns, but field goals. I mean, this Commanders team right now is playing some really solid football in general. And this week, it should continue because the Cleveland Browns are not a very good football team right now. Yeah, they've still got a stout defense, but the offense is just really struggling to get anything going in general. Yeah, they don't have Nick Chubb, and he might come back in a couple of weeks or so, but the Browns right now, there's still no indication of whether or not Deshaun Watson is the answer for this team. And if you're asking me if there's a straight answer for it, I'll tell you. Deshaun Watson ain't the guy right now. You start anybody else for the Cleveland Browns, Jameis Winston, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I would think that this will be a much closer battle, but because it's Deshaun Watson, because this team isn't playing well right now, and you're going up against a red hot team in the Washington Commanders, I got to go with them to take this one. So give me the Commanders to go to 4-1. The Browns drop to an abysmal 1-4. Moving on to the 4:25 window, 4 or 5 window, if you will, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Denver Broncos. Speaking of the Cleveland Browns, Raiders played good enough to beat the Browns on last Sunday. Neither one of these teams are really that strong in general, and the Raiders played this game without Davante Adams and Max Crosby, which, by the way, the rumors are now that Davante Adams is looking for a trade, and he even said he's asking for a trade, and Antonio Pierce apparently wants to do it. And, of course, here in Pittsburgh, because, we did so well with the Brandon Ayuk contract debacle, we are starting the Davante Adams debacle now, and, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that I'm not getting my hopes up at this point. The Steelers can try to get as many of these star players as they want to, but we want to get guys like Davante Adams. We want guys like Brandon Ayuk. But no, here's what we'll get: lesser guys like KJ Osborne, or who's another one here? If the Steelers really want to get a wide receiver too, just see what Tyreek Hill wants, because he's clearly not happy in Miami. I was even saying it on Monday night when they were playing Tennessee. It's just like, Tyreek Hill's not too happy right now. Hey, Omar Khan, why don't you go ahead and make some calls to Miami, see what they want for what they want for Tyreek Hill, because I think he'd be willing to go somewhere else besides staying in Miami and dealing with the hell that this team has to deal with there. But back to the Raiders and Broncos, though. The Raiders are playing just well enough to get by. And they're playing a Denver Broncos team that has slowly but surely been finding its way. Bo Nix is having a decent start to his career after a couple of bad starts to start the season. Getting that big win in Tampa Bay was big. Barely getting out of New York with a win was pretty big on the Broncos' part. The Raiders, however, have had their number for years. And this is a critical matchup, of course, in the AFC West for obvious reasons. And the Raiders have had their number over the last couple of years, so that's why I'm going to stick with the Ravens. Could be another one of those very low-scoring games in general, but, we'll see what happens. We'll see if Bo Nix's success against Tampa Bay and then with the Jets, maybe that plays a part into this game here. But for right now, I'm going to go stick with the Raiders to win this one. Give me the Raiders to go to 3-2 and the Denver Broncos to go to 2-3. And quite honestly, I'm honestly picking the Raiders because they got to play my Steelers next week, and I always am the one that picks the team that the Steelers play the next week to win this week. So the next game does not have to be a must-win game for them. But against the Steelers, of course. But we'll get the Steelers a little later on here. But let's get back to the 4:25 games, if you will. We have the Arizona Cardinals playing the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers are still banged up. Christian McCaffrey still has Achilles problems in both of his Achilles in general. So that's why he's in Germany, which still makes no sense whatsoever. But it's looking like he's going to miss more than half the season, if not all of the season. So anyone that says the Madden curse isn't real, take a look at what's going on with Christian McCaffrey right now. The 49ers have had the benefit of playing lesser teams. They played a New England Patriots team that is very much not the Patriots team of the past, but they're getting by in general, and I think it's helping that they have some of their stars here, like George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. Of course, they don't have Christian McCaffrey, of course, but they're getting by, and they're playing an Arizona Cardinals team that you feel like they should be so much better because of what they did in the second half of the season when Kyler Murray came back, and it's just like, okay, this is the Arizona Cardinals team that we saw a couple years ago when they were 8-0 to start. What were they, like 8? They were like either 6-0 or 8-0 to start the season. I can't remember what it was. It was. Now I'm curious. Kind of in the middle. I was close. 7-0. They were 7-0 to start the season, and then Green Bay comes to town, and then it just quickly fell apart right from the get-go, and they really haven't been the same since then. They've had promise this season. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. are making for a nice connection. James Conner is still playing it up to speed, but it's the defense that's really struggling right now for Arizona. That's really keeping them from getting into games. Kyler Murray's being asked to do way too much for this football team in general, and I feel like there should be so much more. The Cardinals should have so much more wins to this. Is in this season, considering the goodwill they had going into the last season. I thought they were going to be a really good football team in general this year, but right now they have been very much struggling, and I don't think they're going to do much better against San Francisco. San Francisco is so banged up right now. They continue to find ways to win games, though, and there's just no point in denying that the 49ers are still a good football team. Maybe not as good as they were last year when they made it to the Super Bowl, but they're good enough to stick around here, so that's why I'm going to pick them to win this one. So give me the 49ers to go to 3-2, and the Cardinals drop to 1-4. So then we have a matchup between the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. Packers came close to pulling off a comeback win against Minnesota last week. Rams got completely destroyed by the Bears, but then again, the Rams are completely depleted. There are injuries all over the place. They're just struggling to get by here. And Green Bay, this is probably the best game they could possibly walk themselves into here because of the way that the Rams are so depleted right now. Yeah, the Rams got that win over the 49ers in that comeback win a couple weeks ago, but you got a tough team here with Jordan Love getting back in full form here. I mean, he played well last week in his first game back from the injury. And the Packers right now, their defense is really good. The offense is clicking again. Packers right now, I feel like could be a team that if they keep this up, they'll keep giving the Minnesota Vikings a run for their money for when they have to eventually meet up later on in the season in Minnesota. So I'm just going with the more healthier bodies on one team. So give me the Packers to win this one to go to 3-2. Rams dropping to 1-4. And last but not least, for the 4-25 games, we've got the New York Giants and the Seattle Seahawks. Giants. Yeah, this is not a very good football team. I mean, they kept it close against the Cowboys, but I'm sorry. Just because you kicked all those field goals doesn't mean you're going to win games. You're not Chris Boswell for the Steelers. You're not who's the kicker for the Washington Commanders? It's not Dustin Hopkins, is it? Dustin Hopkins, or it's either Dustin Hopkins or Austin Seibert. It could be wrong on both counts. Now I need to see. It's Austin Seibert. I thought Dustin Hopkins was there, but I think he might have been there a couple years before that. But yeah, the Washington Commanders right now are Washington Commanders. What the hell am I talking about here? Yeah, Washington Commanders can win a game with field goal kickers. The Giants, they just can't. They don't have a good running game right now. You can definitely tell that this team missed Saquon Barkley so much. And you're asking Daniel Jones to do way too much, man. Like, you're asking him to do way too much. And, get the ball down to Malik Neighbors. That's pretty much the only thing on offense the Giants have. The Giants have a good defense overall that's keeping them in games. But, Seattle right now. Seattle, I think, proved this week that maybe the first few wins they had in the season were kind of fluky because they were playing such a soft schedule. And the Giants are not a very good football team in general here. So they're playing at home, of course. Seattle's playing at home, of course. So I'm not going to be surprised if Seattle just mops the floor with the New York Giants in this one. Not really much of a surprise on who I pick in this one. I'm taking the Seahawks to go to 4-1. Give me the Giants to drop to 1-4. And thus we get to the Sunday Night Football matchup. The first time these two teams have ever met on the Sunday night. And that is, of course, the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Arguably the most well-known interconference matchup between two teams that were in their prime in the 70s and especially the 90s. America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Steel Curtain, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Definitely much different times nowadays because, of course, of the teams that they have now. Dallas got the win against the Giants, but even in that game, it wasn't an all-out incredible win in general here. They really were just skating by because they were playing such a really bad team of the New York Giants. Like I said, the Giants are really not that good. Dak Prescott was able to get to CeeDee Lamb several times in general, so there was a reason why they won that game. And right now they're going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers team that I might as well just say it, man. Like, look, I had them losing to the Colts last week. That was a given. I just knew that was the type of game where the Steelers were going to just drop the ball on that one. When Anthony Richardson went down, that should have given the Steelers a chance to win that game. But no. Joe Flacco comes in, and then all of a sudden, it's like he's gone back to peak Joe Flacco because he was just decimating that. The Colts' offensive line was just decimating that defense to no end ways, in no way, shape, or form. Like, they were just completely just ruining the defense in general. You didn't hear anything from T.J. Watt. They contained T.J. Watt, which is like, if you do that, that's pretty much game over. And, like, the one thing that I absolutely hated about this game in general was not the fact that the Steelers lost to them. That was a given. It's not the fact that the Steelers tried to make it a game again when it was in pretty much garbage time. I mean, I've watched this team long enough to know that I've seen games like this where I know exactly what's going to happen. I knew the moment that Anthony Richardson threw this bomb to Alec Pierce for like 30 yards to the first play of the game, it was just like, it's going to be one of those games, isn't it? And sure enough, it ended up being one of those games. But the thing that really makes me so mad about this loss was what Mike Tomlin said about, what he said about at the end of the game about, Joe Flacco and the fact that he was not prepared to face Joe Flacco. He literally said he wasn't prepared to face Joe Flacco. He said this, and I quote, "When you work all week to defend Richardson and then you get Flacco, it's a little bit different. It probably took us a little too long to adapt and adjust in some areas. It's a little bit different. It's different. It's different." How long was Joe Flacco a member of the Baltimore Ravens, your division rival? 11 fucking years. You played against Joe Flacco for 11 years, and now you're going to sit there and tell everybody it's different now. What does that even mean? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. It's the same Joe Flacco that was playing well for Cleveland last year. Cleveland's probably kicking themselves right now for not keeping him around and putting all the money on Deshaun Watson. Like, I really do think that this was the reason why the Colts picked up Joe Flacco, because they got to play the Steelers again. So it's just like, well, if we can't have Gardner Minshew completely embarrass them, let's get a guy who's embarrassed them in the past, and Joe Flacco. And just like you let Joe Flacco make a fool out of you, and you have the nerve, you have the audacity to say it's different. Joe Flacco is not playing any different football than he did when he was playing peak Ravens football back in the day. This is just awe-inspiring, and this is exactly what I hate so much about Mike Tomlin. I think every Steeler fan can agree with me on this one. He plays down to competition to a point where it gets so frustrating, so fucking frustrating, and it's just like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, seriously, it's like that. That meme where the kid is yelling at the mother's yelling at the kid in the background, just in the back of the car, is just like, why can't you just be normal? And and the kid's just like, eh. That's what it looks like when I look at Mike Tomlin. It's just like, why can't you just win against inferior teams? And then Mike Tomlin's in the back, like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And here's the worst part about this whole thing: the Colts were playing with a banged up defense and a banged up offensive line. Their center Ryan Kelly was injured in that game. They put a rookie in, and he was completely is keeping the defense intact. He wasn't getting this. There were no game breakers on the defensive side of the ball. It's asinine. It's embarrassing how badly this team played. And guess what? The Cowboys are going to be depleted too. Yeah, Brandon Cooks isn't playing. DeMarcus Lawrence ain't playing. There's a good chance that Micah Parsons won't go. This should be an easy win for them, right? I would think, but I'm not picking the Steelers to win this one. I'm only not picking them because I've seen this movie before. If the Dallas Cowboys somehow the Dallas Cowboys may not have a running game, but they've got a good wide receiver in a CeeDee Lamb. If Dak Prescott finds guys like CeeDee Lamb and finds tight ends like Peyton Hendershot, and who's the newest tight? Don't they have a new tight end this year? Okay, maybe Luke Schoonmaker was last year. I'm thinking of Luke Schoonmaker, but Jake Ferguson's another guy. Yeah, the tight ends took over for the Colts last week, so I would not be surprised if this is the plan for them this week in general. If the Cowboys get off to a strong early lead early on in this game, this is going to be another rough game to watch in general here, and look, I'm not putting the blame on Justin Fields for what happened. He put that team on his back in the fourth quarter. He gave him an opportunity to win the game, but in the end, it was still all for naught in the end because the defense couldn't hold it together. This was the first game where the defense really absolutely looked horrible, and that opens a door for these other teams coming up here who, they don't want to play the steel curtain defense. They now have a plan because of what the Colts just did. Like they exposed that defense in general. So the Steelers defense really needs to come up big in this game because if the Cowboys get out to an early lead early on, this thing's going to get real ugly right from the get-go. I feel like this is a game where the Steelers should win this game. They probably will win this game, but I just don't feel like I should be picking them because I just know what happened the last time this happened. And if the Cowboys get out to too much of a lead in the second half, it's just going to be impossible for them to get back in this game. I mean, yeah, the Cowboys don't have as good of a running game as the Colts do. They don't have a Jonathan Taylor guy in the backfield. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott's back there, but he hasn't really done much since he's gotten back. But you never know. This could be one of those games where they just let him go and just because it wouldn't be the first time in the last year that Ezekiel Elliott's completely shredded the Steelers team. You remember it was with New England last year? Him and Juju Smith-Schuster came to town and just completely took it out on the Steelers. I remember that game. I remember hating myself for watching that game and thinking that this team had any hope of getting back in it. And I'm hoping that's not the case. I hope the Steelers win this game, especially considering that I'm going to have to do a live watch of this for the Reviewing Network Live. So if what I think is going to happen is true, you're going to hear me lose my fucking mind during this game. Like, I try to keep it calm and cool under pressure, but that's a game that if it goes sour quickly, it'll be entertainment value for the folks out there. But yeah, you're going to see a whole different side of me if this goes the way I think it's going to go. But I am going to pick the Cowboys to win this one. I think it's going to be close enough. Knowing the Steelers, it will probably come down to a Brandon Aubrey field goal because that dude is a fucking beast of a kicker right now. I mean, even if he gets at midfield when they need to, he'll probably kick the longest field goal in Acrisure Stadium, and that'd just be a terrible, terrible way to lose that game in general. But I am gonna pick the Cowboys to win this one. So I hope I'm wrong, but I've got a feeling that I won't be. So I'm gonna take the Cowboys to win this one to go to 3-2, and the Steelers to drop to 3-2 because this is part of the NFL's plan in general. This is the part of the plan where the Ravens slowly but surely work their way back up to the top spot because that's just how the NFL rolls, baby. That's just how the NFL rolls. Okay, so now that I have had some time to vent over the Sunday Night Football game, let's go to the last game of the schedule of Week 5, and that is Monday Night Football, the New Orleans Saints taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. A game I pretty much talked about both of these teams beforehand. The Chiefs are 4-0, despite the fact that they have been mostly kind of a mixed bag team in the month of September, but once again, that's kind of what the Chiefs do. They start off very slow. Usually they've had a couple of losses to this point, but right now they're 4-0 right now, and playing good enough to get these wins when it needs to. But the Saints started off very strong. They put almost over 90 points in the first 2 games of the season, but ever since then, the last 2 games of the year have been really, really lackluster. That offense that was there in the first 2 weeks just went away, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was just the fact that, hey, Carolina may not be as good. Carolina's not a good football team this year. Maybe the Cowboys aren't as good as we think they're going to be. But we're going to find out about these New Orleans Saints this week, definitely, because they're going up against the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions right now. And, I think Kansas City should have a good game in this one. I think they should be able to win this one. It will I want to believe it's going to be less ugly than it was the first couple weeks of the season, but we don't know for certain. I don't really know what the New Orleans Saints can really do at this point. I just think that Dennis Allen right now, the offense for the Colts just isn't that good right now. And yeah, they have a new offensive coordinator in Klub Kubiak, who has done very well in the first 2 weeks of the season. But then what happened in week 3 and 4? I think it's all on the head coach. I think Dennis Allen just isn't a good head coach right now, and I don't know if that changes in general. I think for the Saints, their game plan should be putting focus more on the running game. You know, get Alvin Kamara going more. You know, you got Alvin Kamara, who was at the prime of his career early on in the first few weeks of the season, and then just kind of fell off the last couple of weeks. So I feel like if they're gonna win this game, the game plan has to be more on what Alvin Kamara could do rather than Derek Carr. But I don't think it's going to be enough to beat the Chiefs. I think they're going to go to 5-0 in this one. So give me them to go to 5-0. Be with the Vikings as the only 2 undefeated teams up there still. Saints drop to 2-3. So recapping my Week 5 predictions for the week, I have the Falcons beating the Buccaneers, the Vikings beating the Jets, the Bears beating the Panthers, Ravens over the Bengals, the Texans over the Bills, the Jaguars over the Colts, the Patriots over the Dolphins, the Commanders over the Browns, the Raiders over the Broncos, the 49ers over the Cardinals, the Packers over the Rams, the Seahawks over the Giants, the Cowboys over the Steelers, and the Chiefs over the Saints. So let me know your thoughts down below. What are your predictions for Week 5 in general? What do you think of my power rankings? And just tell me what you think here. If you like these videos, let me know let me know. Hit the like, subscribe button, notification button. You're gonna get updates on when videos post. You can check out my last week's predictions video, as well as some of the other videos we do here on this channel. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and I will see you guys next week. So enjoy the games. I'll see you next time. Take care.